Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're loving your life. I'm doing great. Things are going great. I love my life. Who could complain on a day like today? Quentin, good morning. Hope you're doing great. B for victory. Bon matin. Good morning, Bitcoiners. I see Daniel next. Let me just get my hand free. I had my phone on my lap. Good morning, Daniel. Hope you're doing great. We got snow coming to Vermont tomorrow, and I'm missing it again. But I'm told by my family that the mountains are bare of snow now, and it all melted. So I guess I'm not missing the skiing that I thought I was. So that's good. I hate missing December skiing in Vermont. We love it. Good morning, New Worlders. Indeed. Christine, welcome. Good morning. Good morning. Robert, good morning. Bitcoin is all weather. Indeed, it is all weather. Aqualodge Coffee. Sun, live long and prosper. You know, Aqualodge, my, when you remember college or high school yearbooks, right? That was my high school yearbook. You have to write a blurb in your graduating year. Not sure if everyone does that in the whole world, but in America, it's a big thing. In Canada as well. And so I signed mine, live long and prosper. So if you go back to my graduation high school book, that's what it'll say. Enmity, good morning. A Muslim Bitcoiner. The laughing begins with Bitcoiners in 2022 when Fed pivots, cutting interest rates, and providing a false sense of bullishness for the no coiners, fiat coiners, fiaters, and shitcoiners. I think so. Indeed. Assalamu alaikum. There you go. I'm with you on that one. We're going to be having a good laugh. Good morning. Bitcoin's up and coffee is hot. Indeed, Bitcoiner. Cal from Ethiopia, my man. Good afternoon from Ethiopia. Good afternoon, Cal. I hope that in 2024, 2025, the world takes a turn and I end up in Ethiopia. You know what I was looking into yesterday? I didn't even know this. Do you know how amazing Rwanda is now? Rwanda? Do you know how beautiful it is? It's like better than American cities. Like Kigali is way better. Way better than an American city. It's so much cleaner, nicer. The food is amazing. I guess what happened was, because of the genocide 30 years ago and the war and all that stuff, it looks like they just learned some lessons and chilled out for 30 years. And most of the males, it turns out, went into agriculture. So most of the people there became farmers and, much lower time preference. So it like it's nicer than most American towns. I was messing around on Google Maps this weekend in Kigali. I couldn't believe it. Like Wakanda, like it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. So amazing stuff. That's what I did over the weekend, and among other things. But we're not talking about the weekend. We just got to acknowledge that although it is very dark, we've got a sunrise. It happened, and I'm having a little bit of coffee here, right? So we're good. Let's talk about what's new. Bitcoin's running. I forgot to mention that. Jeez, I almost forgot I almost forgot the simplest intro to all shows of all time. That's okay. Well, this coffee kind of reminds me of what this show is all about today, because you know how normally, or at least sometimes, we get like fresh news, right? And it's in the show is just filled with fresh news, and it's like this story happened and Elon did this and this guy did that, right? But then other days it's like kind of an old stale yesterday's news kind of thing, right? An old coffee. Well, today is one of those shows. It's a lot of recycled news. There's not much going on out there. But I got a lot of Moscow time, so we're going to enjoy some Moscow time. And I have a couple news items that were interesting, but we're going to do our best. Cal says the NBA is partnering with some buildings there. They also see the potential of Kigali. Yeah, Cal, thank you for that insight. I did not Kigali thing missed me. Like I didn't know it had become one of the most, and it's weird about, I don't know, would have been my freshman year of law school. So 2005, 2006, I actually had a Rwandan roommate, like a rich girl who roomed with me and two people from Paris. We had a big 2-story house in Quebec City, and it was our first, anyway, didn't work out. Another French person moved in after her. She lasted a few months. But she was telling me at the time when we lived together, oh, it's changing, it's gorgeous, and da da da. I didn't believe it, It's not that I didn't believe it. I was like, well, I didn't even look. Like, I didn't even look into it, right? I'm an idiot. It's true. It's like the most amazing place. So that's good news. Yeah. Thanks, Cal. And here's Cal mentioning what's going on in Ethiopia. Bitmain estimates that 500 to 1,000 megawatt demand for Bitcoin. That's a lot. That's a lot. Oh, no, I'm thinking gigawatts for a second. Okay, yeah. It's a lot. It's like a small town's worth. It's a lot. It's a lot. That is some good news, Cal. Thank you for that. All right. You're waiting for some Moscow time. And boy, do I have it. I've got some great Moscow time today. All right. This is one from the New York Post. Gen Z suffers from menu anxiety when dining out, with many too scared to order their own meals. And we're like, what are the millennials gonna think? They can't order food. All right, I got two amazing ones on Canada, the dumbest country in the world. What do we got from Canada? Now, I can say that because I'm Canadian, right? So it's easy for me to say Canada is the dumbest country in the world because I see it. It's obvious to me, right? It might not be obvious to everyone, but as someone who spends enough time in Canada, I can actually verify it's the dumbest place in the world. I don't spend enough time in New Zealand or Australia, as I've said before. They could probably win. I bet you Ireland and England's pretty dumb, and a lot of these places are competing. So, it's any given Sunday type of thing, right? That's an American expression. Any given Sunday means, the NFL mostly only plays on Sundays, right? The football league, the U.S. Throw the Football League. And so any given Sunday just means like you have to play the game, right? Some team can beat another team on any given Sunday. So on any given Sunday, the dumbest country in the world may be Canada or a few of these other Anglosphere countries. But here's what we know from the Canadian Human Rights Commission. All right. So the Canadian Human Rights Commission has labeled Christmas celebration discrimination grounded in colonialism, you colonists, you fucking colonists celebrating Christmas. And I got a better one from Canada, right? This is his name is Tony Keller, and he writes for the Globe and Mail, which is apparently our number one newspaper in there, right? And he's wondering because there's maybe an election in 2024 in Canada. And Pierre Poliver, the Bitcoiner, who I know and met while I was in law school and worked with him on Parliament Hill, and his wife actually did a little bit of work on the Bitcoin study I did years ago. So she was not married to him at the time and was a staffer in the Senate like myself. So I hung out with her all the time. So this is from the Globe and Mail, right? Opinion. And so Poliver's sort of slogan here is "axe the tax," right? He wants to get rid of taxes. so he's an idiot. He's trying to run for office by cutting taxes. What does this Tony Keller have to say about that? What if axe the tax leaves most Canadians worse off? It's a pretty good one. This one's from Chicago. All right. The Chicago mayor. Chicago's progressive mayor, Brandon Johnson, announces plans to axe the Windy City's high-achieving selective enrollment high schools to boost equity, right? Despite promising not to during election campaign. So the logic here is, wow, people aren't equal because there's some who are really good at stuff. Let's stop the good at stuff. Then everyone will be equal. Chicago logic, right? Chicago logic. Maybe this is why this kind of stuff is happening. This is from Business Insider, right? This isn't funny at all. All right. It's not funny. Okay. Don't laugh. U.S. millennial women are now more likely to die in their late 20s and early 30s than any generation since World War II era, right? Whoops. What happened there? What happened? Speaking of Senate staffers, Senate staffer. All right. Okay. Let me just give you a warning before I even say this joke. We're going to talk about the gay sex for a second in the Senate. Okay. What I am going to say, and I mean this is for real. All right. If these people were hetero, it wouldn't be the story that it is. Right. So we can just acknowledge that there is a little bit of singling out gay people here. Okay, so I'm not what I'm talking about is nothing to do with that, right? I will admit the reason why this story has so much traction. If it was a guy and a girl, you know, and I'll even tell you, as a Senate staffer, I fornicated in the Parliament building before with my wife, secretly in a private room. We didn't record it, right? Like, but I think most people who work in those buildings have. If you've ever been to one of these places, the boozy party, it's pretty crazy, right? So I believe there's much fornication in these buildings right now. He recorded it, stupid. And I don't want to see the images. Like I'm definitely trying to block all when I see it online, I just scroll, right? But the disgust and all that stuff, that we got to check ourselves on that, right? Because that's another thing. What I want to talk about is the NBC headline. Okay. So forget about the action and activity for a second, right? You don't have to like it. No one has to like it, right? But just remember it's being treated differently for a reason. So put that aside for a second, right? Now, this is from NPC News. Okay, the NBC. So remember, I don't know. I've tried to avoid the images, but I've seen the movement. Like even if you scroll, you still end up seeing a bit of it, right? And I don't really like it. But it happened. Okay, this is an actual headline that the fake news wrote. Okay. Senate staffer alleged by conservative outlets to have had sex in a hearing room is no longer employed. He's alleged. He's alleged. He's alleged by conservative outlets. NPC News. Come on. Come on. Come on. All right. I got two more. And this one is from, of course, our good man Joe Biden. These are two Trump-related headlines, right? So this is what Joe Biden calls tonight. Donald Trump channeled his role models as he parroted Adolf Hitler, praised Kim Jong-un, and quoted Vladimir Putin while running for president on a promise to rule as dictator and threaten American democracy. Joe, what a leader. What a leader you are. Amazing. And this is from Axios. Uh, it becomes hard to read these. Favorable Supreme Court rulings that delay or dismantle Trump's federal election interference case would embolden a candidacy that critics already warn poses an existential threat to democracy, right? So a favorable Supreme Court ruling could delay or dismantle Trump. Axios, you are great. You are great. So speaking of Donald Trump, he had an amazing interview this weekend. So have you guys heard about this Panera lemonade thing that it's killing Americans? Have you heard anything about that? Okay, so Panera is a little bit like a, I don't know, Starbucks, but for bread and sandwiches. All right. So it's a chain where you can get bread and you can get sandwiches made and a few things. I mean, they do have coffee there, but it's not a coffee shop. It's more the bread side of it all and the sandwich side of it. It's quite popular, right? Sometimes you'll get it at a highway stop, a gas station. They're all over the cities and stuff like that. They're pretty big. So the lemonade, I think it's got some kind of green tea or they mix something in it for caffeine, but some people have died. Okay, apparently some people have died and it's become this thing. So I don't know much about the lemonade. It sounds too sweet. I would never go near it. I don't eat a Panera. I don't eat toxic US bread ever, right? The US food supply is 100% tainted. So I don't go anywhere near the bread. I bake my own bread or I get it in Quebec or those kinds of things. Or I go really out of my way to find out a place that has really good wheat and things like that, or flour, I should say. So, so apparently this whole thing is, become one of these, a little bit like Red Bull in the early days where they said if you mixed it with alcohol, you would die, right? So you remember what happened then. That was fake, by the way, huh? Did you guys know that? That was one of my friends went to an MBA school. So if you ever didn't know, in 15 years ago, I'd say Red Bull, the drink Red Bull, the Austrian US version of Red Bull, not the one in Thailand, but sort of when it was not starting out, but early days, there was this myth out there, this popular urban myth that if you mixed it with alcohol, and they put it on the can, right? Don't mix with alcohol, right? So they put the warning on the can, don't mix with alcohol. This became like a marketing lesson, right? Because it was one of these things where you warn people that something's dangerous, even though it wasn't, right? Sure, people died the same night they mixed Red Bull and alcohol, but they probably snorted 54 lines of cocaine too, right? So they just got caught up in this thing, and it became one of the greatest marketing coups of all time, right? Don't mix with alcohol. Guess what everyone did? It turned it into one of the most ordered drinks in the world out of nowhere, right? It went from no Red Bull and vodka or Red Bull or whatever to that's all anyone drank. I used to drink Red Bull and alcohol in my college years, right? That was very, very common. So this lemonade has taken on a very similar thing, right? It's dangerous, so people are doing it. So Trump, in his, because Trump, I think not only is he one of the greatest writers alive today, he is one of the last great stand-up comedians, right? Because all the rest of them got woke and they can't do it. They can't say this, they can't say that, they can't offend, but he doesn't care. But it's the delivery and every way he does it, right? So this is his actual, of course, I can't repeat it. I mean, I can't exactly mimic it, but I can give you a sense of what he said, right? So he's giving one of his off-the-cuff speeches about Joe Biden and the economy. And he says, the lemonade didn't kill you when I was president. It was tasty and fun to drink. We loved lemonade, didn't we? Or no, I screwed it up already. Okay. I screwed it up already. Let me start over. I already screwed it up. Right. So I had it saved in the wrong order. Right. Everything is bad under Joe Biden. Even the lemonade is killing people. Did you see that? People drink lemonade and die. The lemonade didn't kill you when I was president. It was tasty and fun to drink. We loved the lemonade, didn't we? We did, but not under Biden. Bacon is more money. Gas is more money. The lemonade is more money, and it kills you. When life hands you lemonades, Joe Biden kills you with them. When life hands you lemonade, Joe Biden kills you with them. Very good. Very funny. Very funny. Speaking of very good, now I didn't see this coming. Trump's daughter, Ivanka, also watched the Jeff Bezos interview that we were talking about a few days ago. And we were talking about the time preference and all of that stuff, the psychological ramifications of time preference and what setting a clock in your own mind and establishing time. How would I say it? Establishing some form of sense of this stuff, right? And so Ivanka tweeted yesterday, and it's quite amazing. Listen to Ivanka Trump's tweet, okay? This is not funny. This is really insightful and quite beautiful. So here's Ivanka Trump saying, I listened to Lex Friedman's interview with Jeff Bezos while working out this morning. Particularly loved the discussion of day one thinking. This is Ivanka Trump. This is what she says next. She says, it reminded me of the Alan Watts statement. You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. And the Zen concept of the beginner's mind, an attitude of openness, eagerness, and lack of preconceptions when studying a subject. Unencumbered by one's own expertise and preconceived notions, even at an advanced level, just as a beginner would. In essence, both a beginner's mind and day one thinking advocate for a perpetual state of learning, flexibility, and openness to new ideas. Isn't that amazing? I've been an Ivanka fan for a long time. But here she is quoting Alan Watts, right? How long until she becomes a Bitcoiner? Is it going to be long now, right? And again, it's my prediction that I do believe, I mentioned in that show that Jeff Bezos would find Bitcoin in 2024, but I've been saying for even longer that Donald Trump will find Bitcoin in 2024. And if that happens, right, remember, all Trump had to do to set Bitcoin back in 2019 was say he's not a fan. One of the greatest attacks ever on Bitcoin, ever, right? So you do that. Imagine if the opposite is true. Imagine if Trump comes out and says, I'm a fan, right? It could do wonders. It could be one of the greatest stories for Bitcoin ever. And when you see things like that and you understand her ability to persuade him, it might actually happen, right? She's out there quoting Lex Friedman, Jeff Bezos, Alan Watts, all these people. So that's a very positive sign. I don't think Hunter Biden's out there quoting Alan Watts, right? I don't think that's happening. So And it sort of reminds me, what they're saying here. You're under no obligation, and sort of the starting over, and where all this expertise, credibility comes from, and the idea of, the thing that we've been talking about as Bitcoiners for a long time: stay humble, because ego itself, right? I'm an expert. I'm an economist. I know, right? We've seen this a million times, right? We've seen the best economists like Taleb and Rubini take a run at Bitcoin, egos, flaring up as they do it, and it destroyed them. It completely and totally destroyed them. And when I think of this ego thing, and what comes of it, right? um, the story this weekend, with Lindsey Graham, right? A lot of people talking about this. So Lindsey Graham, right? If anyone doesn't know, Lindsey Graham, sort of a Republican, right? But can't wait to go to war with everyone. Will spend all the money in the world to go to war with people. He went on one of these talk shows this weekend and said, I don't see any evidence against Joe Biden, right? And people were like, what? What? And of course, instead of analyzing his opinion as real, everyone now who understands how blackmail works and how the US system might be totally operating on blackmail, like the whole thing might be blackmail, like every decision that makes no sense probably has some blackmail behind it. And so he comes out and says that, right? Now, everyone sort of picking up on this, like, obviously, Lindsey Graham is blackmailed. And, I don't look, I just defended the Senate staffer at the beginning, right? And I said, if he wasn't gay, if it wasn't gay sex, we probably wouldn't be treating the story the same, right? So this is not a anti-gay thing, right? But in Lindsey Graham's mind, a lot of people say he's gay. A lot of people say other things are going on. I don't know anything about that, right? That's just what people say. But this ego thing and blackmail and not wanting to be honest and not letting people know and not doing what Ivanka Trump said day zero, right? Like you're not necessarily guilty for your past and you can start over and all of these things. Um, in the case of Lindsey Graham, looks like it ain't working, because the whole blackmail system really runs on credentialism and having these sort of experts, the opposite of what Ivanka's saying, right? The opposite. Remember what she's saying, right? Unencumbered by own expertise and preconceived notions. Now, I understand not everyone, you should still aspire to be all-knowing in your field of expertise, right? You should aspire to that. There's never a way to be that, but you can aspire to be the most knowledgeable in any one field. That's great, great system to be successful in life. But when it does encumber you, when it doesn't allow you to see through because your ego is so large, like a Taleb, like a Rubini, right? Bitcoin itself was, if they understood it, was the end of their ability to be these sages and these experts, right? It takes that away because it sort of lowers the IQ required to understand economics, right? It doesn't. Bitcoin actually simplifies how we should see economics. It doesn't, and because it excludes politics. You know what I've been saying for a long time? The word macroeconomics is a scam. There's only economics. Micro and macro and all this, dividing them, very dumb. Macroeconomics is politics. That's it. There's nothing else to it, right? Because economics are choices individuals make to consume, spend, save, whatnot, right? A state doesn't make decisions the same way a person does. It makes them politically. So it's not the incentive structure of people, right? That's economics. It's the incentive structure of organizations and institutions. And when we go down the path of Bitcoin and we understand that we have the lever to separate state and money, we understand that macro politics is a stupid word. It's made up. It doesn't make any sense. It's just politics, right? So I think one day we are going to recalibrate to understand that economics is economics. There's no micro and macro. It's just economics. The invented field of macroeconomics will be called politics once you separate money and the state, right? Which is more or less impossible right now with this blackmail system, because all these people are not really thinking logically. They're thinking in ways that would save their ass and keep them from embarrassment. No one is actually operating for the best interests of Americans at all, right? It's just all these people that don't want secrets to come out, secrets that probably aren't even that bad. I mean, I don't know what Lindsey Graham is really up to. Is it as bad as they say? Maybe. I don't know, right? It could just be He likes older men too. I don't know. We don't know. Right? But there's definitely embarrassment there. Here's Martyr Maid saying it, right? And everyone now, because Madison Cawthorn this weekend, Madison Cawthorn, he's the congressman who they ran out of DC in the midterms. He was a wheelchair fella and very good friends with Trump. Now I don't know what's going on down there, right? Sometimes people who are in a wheelchair can't, so maybe they're not susceptible to blackmail and all that kind of stuff. But what he said when he got kicked out was that he was invited to regular orgies, right? And that's apparently what got him booted. So here's what Martyr Maid says: sexual blackmail is a great way to control powerful people, which is why degeneracy is encouraged and abetted in DC. The mob and intel agencies, but I repeat myself, have always used it. Power brokers closed ranks around Epstein for a reason. American democracy is the CIA knowing every shameful sin of anyone who matters and using it to control them. Looks like that's true, right? It looks like that's true. And that's why when we think of the battle that we're in, there's all these people talking about the Civil War movie and the pre-programmed persuasion that's coming through. And what does that mean? Um, the truth is we've been in a social civil war for a long time. And Bitcoiners have understood for a long time that the battlefield of World War III that we're already engaged in is psychological and economic, right? And if you put those things together, the psychological engine that perpetuates our country forward and our nation forward or not is what's being measured, right? And what we can see now is that we're sputtering in circles and are completely incapable of making progress. Things are breaking all around all the time. And the battlefields of this war are censorship, they're debanking, right? We've seen that in Canada, we've seen that all around. Deplatforming, these kinds of things are how the war perpetuates, right? Which is why when we think of it as like a mind invasion, right? We even had Robert Kennedy talking about that this weekend, right? This idea of credentialism and the idea that you're supposed to trust the experts as part of the battlefield of World War III, right? Trust the experts has been a rallying cry of the fiat maximalists since before COVID, right? It's been that way for a long time. I think they even allowed, Greta wasn't required to have scientific opinions. She was just required to moralize you about wasting her childhood and then point to the experts who you're just supposed to believe because she told you to, right? And her feelings depended on whether or not you believed them, so people believe them. But here's what Kennedy says, right? Talking about exactly this. He says, trust in the experts is not a feature of science. It's not a feature of democracy. It's a feature of religion and totalitarianism, right? Which I think is what Bitcoiners have understood for a long time. That's why endemic to our world is to don't trust, verify, right? We have been organizing ourselves around that very principle from the beginning, which makes us the most well prepared for what World War III is. We saw World War III coming before it was even hot, right? Before the social aspect had creeped into every aspect of society. We saw it way before that. So that's what made us more well prepared for all of this stuff. And it's what's made us a little more resistant to this invasion of the mind that seems to be happening everywhere. And that's why the brainwashing has become so important as well, right? Censorship is one thing, but it's probably better at this point, because censorship seems to be breaking. It's probably better to put crazy things in people's minds and have them take that and run with it, right? Hallucinate a reality out of it and those things. So amazingly, Vivek Ramaswamy had one of the greatest weekends in the social battle, right? All of these policies that are being fought over, where the true battle for World War III is being fought. Fake news, the fiat distribution nodes, right? The things that push fiat around the world being hallucinatory fake news. That whole system of perpetuating the fiat industrial complex, the hallucinatory industrial complex, the military industrial complex, perpetuating that forward requires people to get others to be brainwashed and hallucinate. And there's a few subjects that are the most well adept, right? So this weekend, Vivek did that on January 6th. He did it on ESG and he did it on AI, right? Three of the most important battlefields right now in World War III. And this is what he said, right? So He comes out on January 6th stuff, and this goes back to his statements on CNN last week, which he's sort of doubling down on, right? Here's what he says. He says, too bad for the media. We'll take the truth on January 6th mainstream. There is clear evidence that there was the very least entrapment of peaceful protesters, similar to the fake Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot and countless other cases. The FBI won't admit how many undercover officers were in the field on January 6th. Remember, Trump's got a really cool trap. I told you about this a few weeks ago, right? Where he's getting them to say there weren't enough to prevent the trouble. So they've got to sort of, he's got them trapped, right? Very clever of Trump's lawyers. So the FBI won't admit how many undercover officers were in the field on January 6th. Capitol Police, on one hand, fired rubber bullets and explosives into a peaceful crowd, who they then willingly later allowed to enter the Capitol. That doesn't add up, and the actual evidence turns the prior narrative upside down. If the deep state is willing to manufacture an insurrection to take down its political opponents, they can do anything. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? So that's what he said about that. The next one he had that went viral, right? So imagine, right now he's talking about, like, don't trust the politicians, right? Which we know. We're not here to teach you don't trust the politicians. We're way past that. There's no reason to trust them, right? As Bitcoiners, but that's part of being. It's part of understanding where the battle lines are in World War III. And I think Vivek, by going this way, is slicing right into the enemy, like deeply, right? Where it's going to completely affect them, and they're going to have to hallucinate more, right? Because the only answer is to hallucinate more. And so he's got them trapped, and more of these hallucinations become harder and harder to architect, because hallucinations can pop very easily. You have to hallucinate it all. Again, it comes back to the fault tolerance, right? We talk about the Bitcoin fault tolerance of 51%. Well, it tolerates 49%. The fiat fault tolerance, we don't know what the real number is. It's not a hard science or anything, but we've been sort of musing about it, right? That the coordination problem that the fiat industrial complex has is far greater. Their threshold, their tolerance for faults in the system is way lower than it is for Bitcoin. 49% is actually quite a bit, right? That we can handle 49% malicious actors. In the case of fiat, it's not that high at all, right? 10% and the entire architecture of hallucination falls apart because it's not real. So because it's 100% a psychological construct, destroying it is that much simpler, right? In the case of Bitcoin, the 51% of nodes are doing real world things, and of course are burning electricity and performing proof of work, which means it is real, right? Versus being a hallucination. So by taking on the hallucinations in the insurrection talk, the way he's doing it is very powerful, by using an actual example of how low the government can go, how little you should actually trust them. And the Gretchen Whitmer case is exactly that, right? Now, I'm even embarrassed to say something happened in Canada like this years ago. They were called the Toronto 18 or something like that. And this happened in the after 9/11, right? They had a plan. It happened in like 06, and I was working for the Prime Minister that summer. And so working for him in Ottawa, it was between my freshman and sophomore year of law school. I was working there, and that's when the plot was uncovered. They wanted to behead the Prime Minister. So it was big scandals, right? Muslim guys want to behead the Prime Minister. But we were only fed the main headline, right? When you looked into the actual trial of what happened to them, you found out that they were low IQ Muslim fellas, right? They weren't geniuses. One of them had a doctorate or something, but it's not that smart anyway. And the truth was that the Canadian spies were the ones who managed the whole thing. It was a total entrapment case, right? And so you only realized it years later, right? And not only realized that, it was only even shared widely that the involvement of the Canadian intelligence officials was so predominant. But it looks like this Whitmer case. So I fell for one of those for years, right? Now I'll blame the media, right? I'll blame no one had some people did have the instincts that the whole thing was a scam. I wasn't there. So The Whitmer case looks just like that. Once you know they're capable of this, once you know they can do this, you realize that they probably do it all the time, not just the once, right? If they're capable of doing it one time, how many more times are they capable? So it's the same way that we talk about elections, right? Now, did you see this thing with Rudy Giuliani as well over the weekend, right? Giuliani and Ruby Freeman, right? So this is why it's the perfect case of why Bitcoiners and all of us here don't screw around with these stories about I got a video of a person with ballots and they're scamming them. Don't do what Rudy Giuliani did. I love Rudy Giuliani, okay? But it looks like he did go after an innocent American. Like it looks like he did, right? Ruby Freeman, I don't care if she's a Democrat or whatever. There was probably nothing wrong with what she did. I know it's Georgia and elections and blah, 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 blah. But as I've said from the start, almost any video you see, just because you say, I saw the video, there was boxes under the thing. Well, experts, but people who know how election systems work say, yeah, that's normal. Like you put work aside, you catch up on it later. There was nothing really bad about what we saw. It was just people doing their jobs. And if you don't understand, then you can hallucinate that she was cheating, right? Now, there is zero, it's been how many years? There's zero, literally zero legal cases against Ruby Freeman, the Democrat in Georgia. None, right? It was just Rudy Giuliani, who I love. And they say he owes $100 and something million now for this, for defaming her. I think it'll go down. But still, she's an American citizen who I think I don't agree with any of her opinions at all. She probably thinks she's defending the world against Hitler and probably believes all this crazy stuff. But that doesn't mean she was criminally involved in the election system, right? So remember, you're always on terrible ground if you're arguing the literal physical election stuff, right? What you have to go to is the way Bitcoiners understand it. It's the system itself. You don't need proof of one part of corruption. You need to understand the whole system and the way it's built. The way it's built is, and we found from Rasmussen this weekend, something like 20% of Americans had their neighbors vote for them or something like that in the mail-in stuff, right? I don't know the exact numbers, but it was unreal. And I don't think that's a problem, right? If I'm not voting and someone wanted to use my ballot, I don't think that's really going to cost an election. But at the scale that it was, it could, right? It could. So the way Vivek is talking about January 6th here is in the same way talking about how it's systemic, right? You want to show it's systemic, not I saw one case of a person cheating, like the Dinesh D'Souza 5,000 mules and stuff like that. It's entertaining. I love Dinesh D'Souza, right? He's right, but not about the particulars. And you got to be careful of those. That's the same as trusting experts, right? Because you're trusting people who are forcing you to hallucinate. You don't want to hallucinate. You don't need to. There's enough there already to see what's going on. And in elections, you just need to look at the system. That's it. You don't need to have details. That's the way we're going to handle it at Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville. I've got Peter Todd signed up. He's Peter Todd, who is a Bitcoin core developer. He invented replace by fee. He was like a prodigy of cryptography, right? Before Bitcoin. And Peter Todd, in his regular job, besides being a Bitcoiner, is a actual applied cryptographer, right? And an applied cryptographer is who you get to monitor elections these days. So he's a professional elections monitor, not because he understands shit about democracy. That's not the important part. It's the systems that are used to run elections because they're cryptographically based. And cryptographers like him are the people you need to verify whether the system is corrupted or uncorruptible or credible or whatever. So we're going to have him there as the actual person, right? Talking about this. Is people say open timestamps. I'm not even talking about, I'm not even talking about integrating Bitcoin into it. I think paper ballots are enough, right? I'm not here selling Bitcoin and elections. Maybe, but it's not even necessary, right? The credibility is so low that we don't need to make it super extra credible. We just got to make it somewhat credible. Paper ballots would do that. Oh, did you know this? And I think this is where we're headed. We've heard Vivek talk about making it a holiday, election day. Do you know what ended the Civil War? We see the reconciliation statue getting torn down in Arlington Cemetery in DC. Very sad to see, right? The reconciliation was a huge project in America. And do you know what the keystone of reconciliation is? Do you know? Do you know does anyone know what the keystone of Civil War reconciliation was? Christmas. It's the national holiday of Christmas. The North, where I'm from in New England, right? Because we were such Puritans, because we left the old church behind, the collected, combined church and state, right? Which is what they were still fleeing from to create America. That story, right? Of the Puritans coming to America. The Puritans were so against feasts and religious holidays, they didn't do any. It was illegal. You did not waste money on religious observance at all, right? That was almost sinful. So there was no such thing as Christmas because it was just another what in their minds was a Catholic feast, right? But in the South, so America was founded by two populations, Jamestown and Plymouth Rock, the Mayflower, right? Jamestown was Sin City, tobacco, rum, sex, craziness, wealth, all kinds of stuff going on down there. And that was in the South in Virginia. And the Catholics started going there. Not to pick on Catholics, but that's where they started heading, right? And and Maryland, Maryland is totally Catholic. That's where Joe Biden, I think he's Catholic. That's where a lot of these people come from. Maryland, the state, is a Catholic state. Baltimore, all these places. To the point where even the tobacco that was smoked in Europe, depending on where it came from, Virginia tobacco would go to England. Maryland tobacco, much stronger. The Gaulois cigarettes that you still get in France, that kind of stuff was from Maryland. Different taste of tobacco, different, all that kind of stuff. And so what happened was the South did celebrate Christmas. The North did not. Lincoln said for reconciliation, we're going to create a national holiday, Christmas, and everyone's going to celebrate Christmas. And so the North, the Puritans, who, as I said, were 100% against religious observance of holidays and feasts and things like that, said nope, but they were forced to do reconciliation. So the South and the Confederates actually exported Christmas to the North. Christmas is not a national holiday before that. It's a local holiday. Some states that were Catholic would do a Christmas mass and celebration, but it was not a national holiday. It was made a national holiday in reconciliation for the Civil War. I believe, and this is something that Vivek has said many times, that he will make the voting day, election day, a holiday, which is exactly what we need to do. To get over this Civil War, this social Civil War that we're in, making a new holiday might just be it. And one day paper ballots might be the way we celebrate American democracy like it used to be. Make it a real holiday. And that's what Vivek is saying, right? And I think it would work. I do think it will work. So amazing. Here's what else he said this weekend. He went on his show. He went on another show and talked about the ESG cartel, right? And boy, did he explain what's going on. I mean, if you want to know about incentives and who's acting which way, and you don't need to go all the way to Klaus Schwab and they want us to eat bugs and have power and control over us. And you don't need to hallucinate that much, right? Vivek had every bit of the incentive explained in this way. He said, it's an ESG cartel in this country. BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, they're using $20+ trillion of your money. You're taught that you have a free market economy, but when both sides of the competition are effectively controlled by the same set of actors, that's not competition. Why are they doing this? And he explained it. He goes, actually, what it looks like is this. If you're the California pension plan and you give your $1 trillion to BlackRock to invest, well, guess what you end up doing? You have a bunch of midwit loser politicians and cronies that are sitting around on the boards of these pension plans, right? And then the pension plan, because it's so filled with low IQ losers and people who are completely blackmailed, corrupted, all this kind of stuff, they'll say, well, but BlackRock, if you don't adhere to our low IQ standards, we won't even give you the money to manage. So in the end, the money managers are just like, well, I got to follow these low IQ midwits. So it's this weird case of the lowest IQ people actually dominating a lot of the incentive structure for the largest parts of our economy. That's how stupid things have become. That's how stupid it's become. So Vivek has it, completely right there. But here's where things get interesting, right? So Vivek also gave one of the best speeches you're ever going to hear off the cuff on AI, right? And he said in the end, because it was all about this, what he was saying in the end, and he brought it back to something I actually verified about him in the early days, which is fun. Because I had a lot of questions about him at first, right? When you first see him, and I reached out to him to speak at Bitcoin 2023 over a year ago now. I was already in touch with him personally in November 2022. But I still had some questions. But I ended up finding out that someone I used to work with went to high school with him. And this person told me, yeah, he was exactly what he looks like tennis nerd, always involved in the tennis club and this and that. So he told a story yesterday in New Hampshire about AI. A little kid, right, asked him about AI, and like a 10-year-old or something. Why are people stressed out about it? And so he says, you know what happened when I was young? I worked at the Cincinnati Open, which is an open that happens just after our tennis matches in Canada. We get the Cincinnati, and then they all come to Montreal and Toronto. So I've always paid attention to the Cincinnati thing. It's the gear up after Wimbledon, before the US Open. They come to America, they play on hard courts, and they go. There's a few big ones. Cincinnati's one of them. And so he said he was a ball boy there when he was a kid, right? He worked, it was one of his first jobs, and he worked to being a line judge when he was still in his early teens. And he said this is just before one of the early instances of AI came in, which was calling the ball, predictive models for where the ball was going to be in and whether or not it hit and all this kind of stuff. And he said, so at first, when he was just a human doing the line judge, he said he would get argued with by the players all the time, right? They would say, no, no, no. That was all the rage, right? He said when the AI came in and started making the calls, even though it was terrible, the players stopped arguing because they trusted the expert of the machine, right? The algorithm of the machine. They trusted that expertise. And so he said that's the problem, right? The problem is not AI. It's how we react to it. AI itself is not a problem. So we've been saying that for a long time, right? How we react to it. Do we regulate it? Do we put it in the hands of a few who could brainwash us? Do we make sure it's woke? And he says that, right? If you ask it about global warming now, it'll give you the woke political answer. If you ask it about many things, it will give you the stupidest answer you could imagine because it's programmed by stupid people, right? So, and when I say stupid people, I mean people with a mind virus. So, whose brains are broken, right? So he went on and said that. He says, our only answer in the end, and amazingly, what I said in Satoshi Wedding Murders and what I've been writing about AI for 8 years now, right? Publicly writing this, is that the way to get over our problems with AI is literally faith. Literally faith. In mine, I put the concept of the God constant inside of the AI so that it can get over the Heisenberg uncertainty principle and create a synthetic thought from nothing, from the void, right? Like humans can do. We can create thoughts from the void. And so if you can't do that, if you can't have a God constant, you get caught on where am I from? What am I doing here? Who's in charge? Who do I have to look for direction? And then you become a robot. But if you can have your own synthetic thoughts that come from nowhere, that come from the void, then you're something different than a robot who can be programmed. And so what I said, to get over that, they needed faith in order to create a circuit between a subatomic processor, between the nucleus and the electron. And it literally is, because of course the electron is in one place and everywhere, right? So to get over it, they need to actually have a belief that the electron is where they believe it to be, to create that unique thought. And I called that in my story the God constant. And it literally is just a way to nullify their perpetual questions about themselves existentially. And so my AI is way more faith-based than any AI that ever has been spoken about or, written about. And I did it years before because I just didn't imagine it was going to be Terminator robots. I wouldn't accept that. It didn't make sense. It seemed like there would be more magic to it, if you will, right? Or something more human to it, or something more spiritual, believe it or not. And so his actual answer is that, right? We have to have faith in ourselves, in the magic of creation, in the world we live in, and not just listen to these machines telling us the world is ending and all this stuff. So it was a beautiful answer. And I like it because it confirms my own ideas. So I always love confirmation bias. But there you go. That's those were his answers. And in the end, when you look again at this war that we're in, right, being a social civil war, the battlefronts being economic, psychological, lying, censoring, debanking, all of these things, having people like Trump who can laugh at them, right? Having people like Vivek who can actually handle these complicated things. Imagine you had someone who was like, no, I can build AI better, and trying to argue that with the people. What are they going to be like? All right. So it's not going to work. Same with ESG cartel stuff. Same with January 6th stuff, right? Same with elections. You have to go for the system. You have to go for the incentive structures. You have to go for the model. You can't get stuck in the social civil war arguing about the particulars of the symptoms, right? You have to go right to the source. And so that's, in the end, what's going to draw everyone to Bitcoin in 2024 is that the systems that have created this mess are breaking before our eyes. And we're kind of laughing at them, right? We're kind of laughing at them. Imagine our man Fetterman is becoming one of the best congressmen in the place. Fetterman. Fetterman. We love Fetterman now, right? We've always loved Fetterman. But you got to give him credit. It takes a lot of courage for him that now that his brain is sort of coming back, to go piss off all these Democrats. Now he's saying that the farmland that was bought up by all these other interests has to come back to Americans. He's making a lot of sense, right? Again, I look, Fetterman 2024, guys. Fetterman, we love him. We love him. We love Fetterman. All right. That's about all I got today, guys. It's a slow news day, right? It's a slow news day. As I said, we're not dealing with a lot of bright, fresh news today. Yeah, we love Peter Todd for this stuff. Indeed, Tommy. Happy HODL Day. Yeah, it is the HODL anniversary. We my colleague in the old days at CoinDesk, a fella named Pete Rizzo, made an amazing media package for 10 years of Bitcoin in 2019. We recorded a lot of it in 2018. It sort of went all over the world. Oh, did he? Oh, okay, well, let's kill him. We hate Fetterman now. I didn't see that. We hate him. Fuck Fetterman. Thanks, Capenta, for that. What was I saying? I don't even remember. Oh yeah, we made the media package, and we had the HODL guy was sort of forgotten to time. We went and tracked him down, and now he's because we tracked him down, everyone knows who he is now, and we re-mythologized it. But that was a little bit of work. We found him though. It was cool. Howdy, Edgar. Howdy. Mid-wit loser politicians. Love it. Hope you're feeling better, Edgar. All right. That's all I got today, guys. It is a slow news day. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Right. Hopefully we get a bit more news, but we can do more of these. We can do some of these like year in review things too, So I'll have to be a little creative with some content if nothing breaking happens. I expect it to be slow all week. And then next week I'll be doing a little traveling. So but I will publish that schedule. All right, team. Looks like Edgar's doing better. Great news, Edgar. Happy to hear it. What's on that hat? Bedford. Oh, you're a Bedford soccer fella. Awesome. Bedford comes up in my life a lot, by the way. I don't know why, but my Vermont house runs through Bedford to get to Montreal, Bedford, Quebec. So there's all kinds of Bedford in my life. And I lived in Bedford Stuyvesant in New York. So big part of my life, that Bedford. All right, Robert. Peace. Thanks, Lightning Vend. Awesome, guys. See you.